3 in the morning. A time when the city holds its breath, and the only sound to break the profound silence was the violent whirring of a blender. It was a vicious, grinding noise, tearing through the stillness of the living room. At the head of the dining table sat In-sik. Dressed not for sleep, but for a boardroom meeting, in a flawless navy suit, his silk tie knotted perfectly at his throat. Before him, a steaming bowl of thin porridge. And across from him, his wife, Kyung-ju. She sat slumped in her chair, as limp and lifeless as a marionette with its strings cut. In-sik lifted a silver spoon. The clink against the ceramic bowl echoed like a gunshot in the dead air. A grotesque smile crept across his lips as he whispered, "Darling, you're finally listening to me." And as the blender fell silent, the metallic tang of iron began to coil through the air. Our story begins 6 months before this dreadful dinner was ever served. It was a bitter autumn morning, the kind that chills you to the bone. In-sik walked out his front door, his tie knotted just as perfectly. But he wasn't headed to the office. His destination was a cold, lonely bench in a deserted park. The business card that read "Department Manager" at a major corporation was now worthless. The cold from the bench seeped through his thin suit pants, an ache that mirrored the one in his soul. He had dedicated his entire life to that company, and they had discarded him with a single signature. But he couldn't bring himself to go home. He knew that the moment he confessed his failure to Kyung-ju, the last shred of his pride, his very manhood, would crumble into dust. He finally dragged his weary body home as evening fell. The moment he opened the door, he was met with the sharp edge of his wife's voice. "You smell of liquor again? Do you think money just grows on trees? It's time to face reality." Her words were daggers in his heart. Kyung-ju was a fighter, a survivor. But as her husband's paycheck shrank, her voice grew louder, her eyes harder. That night, In-sik lay in bed, staring at the rigid wall of his wife's back. Even in their small bed, a frigid distance separated them. From a hidden corner of his drawer, he secretly took a pill for his erectile dysfunction. He prayed it would make a difference, that he could feel like a powerful man again. But all he felt was his heart hammering against his ribs, his body remained as unresponsive as stone. A dark thought began to fester in his mind. It's not me that's broken. It's her. This woman, she's draining the very life out of me, The situation spiraled out of control. Desperate, In-sik took out secret loans and gambled it all on the stock market, believing one big win could fix everything. But it was a catastrophe. He lost it all, his severance, and the money he borrowed against their home. He was now so broke, he had to ask his wife for money just to buy a pack of cigarettes. As he sat on the sofa all day, a ghost in his own home, Kyung-ju would wash the dishes with a furious clatter. Crash. Bang. To In-sik, every sharp sound was an insult. Are you even a man? Can you even pay for the food you eat? The noise was a trigger, chipping away at his sanity. He became convinced she didn't just resent him. She despised him. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Through a cracked open door, In-sik overheard his wife on the phone with a friend. Her voice was laced with a cruel mix of irritation and ridicule. "Oh, him? Don't even ask. He hasn't been a real man in years. He's been neutered. He's just a parasite living in my house, eating my food." In that instant, something inside In-sik's mind snapped. Neutered. Parasite. The words echoed in his skull, eating away at his brain. His hands began to tremble with a rage so profound it made him sick. He retreated to his room, turned on the computer, and in the search bar, he typed, "perfect control. Gaslighting. And, lethal dose of sleeping pills, the face reflected in the cold blue light of the monitor was no longer that of a defeated middle-aged man. It was the face of a monster, finally breaking free. From that day on, In-sik began to execute his meticulous, horrifying plan. He carefully opened the bottle of vitamins his wife took every morning. He ground up sleeping pills and muscle relaxants into a fine powder and mixed them in. Just a tiny, imperceptible amount each day. Within a week, the effects began to show. The sharp edge in Kyungju's voice softened. She complained of constant drowsiness, dozing off on the sofa. She began to stumble when she walked. Watching his wife drift through the day in a hazy fog, In-sik felt a profound, sickening thrill. "Honey, get me some water," he would command. And she would slowly, obediently, comply. Her helpless submission, it was the restoration of the masculinity he'd lost. The weaker she became, the more powerful he felt. With his wife suspended in a drug-induced haze, In-sik began to stage a play. He would dress in his crisp suit each morning, leave, and return in the evening, pretending to come home from a successful day at work. "Darling, I'm home," he'd announce. "I landed the big contract today. The boss gave me a huge bonus." He spun elaborate tales of success. Normally, Kyungju would have scoffed, but her medicated mind couldn't distinguish fantasy from reality. With clouded eyes, she would nod and murmur, "You worked so hard, you really did." Hearing those words sent a jolt of ecstasy through him, a strange and disturbing flicker of physical arousal. In this perfect kingdom he had built on lies, he believed he could reign as king forever. But a castle built on lies is always one gust of wind away from collapse. The end came without warning. A single overdue credit card bill in the mailbox was all it took to detonate the truth. Kyungju, having a rare moment of clarity as the drugs wore off, found it first. When In-sik walked through the door in his "just home from work" charade, she threw the letter in his face. "What is this? A big contract? A bonus? Are you insane? Are you trying to make us homeless?" Her screams echoed off the walls. Consumed by betrayal and terror, she pulled out divorce papers. "Sign them. Now. And get out of my house. You useless, parasitic fraud." In that moment, In-sik's world went white. He could not bear to see the authority he had so carefully constructed, the sweet illusion of respect, shatter into contempt before his very eyes. Parasite. That word again. It severed the last thread of his sanity. In-sik's gaze fell upon his tie, lying on the dining table. It was his favorite, an expensive silk tie, a symbol of the successful family man he once was. He picked it up slowly. Kyungju was still screaming, too lost in her rage to notice him approaching. It was over in a second. He pulled the tie taut between his hands and whipped it around her neck. A choked gasp escaped her as her eyes flew wide with terror. Her screams for help were trapped in her throat. In-sik leaned in close, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered. "Be quiet. I am the head of this house. I fed you. Who are you to tell me to leave?" The pressure from his hands was relentless. He held on, until her struggling ceased, and her limp hand fell to her side. And now we are back. 3 a.m. In-sik had seated his wife's cooling body in the chair, tying her securely with rope. Then he went to the kitchen and turned on the blender, pulverizing leftover rice and side dishes from the fridge into an unidentifiable mush. He brought the bowl to her. "Here you are, my love. Your favorite. I made it myself. Now eat up. Don't make a mess." He tried to force the spoon past her sealed lips. The gruel dribbled down her chin, staining her clothes, but he didn't care. His eyes were gleaming with madness, but a serene, satisfied smile played on his lips. In the distance, the faint wail of a police siren began to grow. Closer and closer it came. But In-sik had no intention of running. The front door burst open as police swarmed in. "Freeze!" Hands in the air, they screamed, weapons drawn. But In-sik simply turned his head slowly to face them. His expression was bizarrely calm. No, it was more than calm. It was proud. As an officer slapped the cold steel of handcuffs on his wrists, In-sik glanced down at his own body. Incredibly, the physical impotence that had tormented him for so long was gone. In the moment of ultimate destruction, the thrill of completely dominating and destroying another human being had shocked his dead senses back to life. It was a horrifying miracle, born of midlife despair, crushing inferiority, and a twisted, possessive rage. As he was being led away, In-sik stopped abruptly and looked back. He saw the solitary figure of his wife, tied to the chair, her head bowed. An officer pushed his back. "Let's go," he urged. In-sik then turned, looked the officer dead in the eye, and asked in a polite, earnest voice, "Excuse me, officer, but did my wife finish her meal?" "I don't think she's finished." The officers were so profoundly disturbed they couldn't speak. In the 3 a.m. silence, only the sound of In-sik's low, chilling laugh echoed down the hallway. He never loosened his tie. It was as if it were the last thread holding his shattered world together.